Imagine sitting in a room. Around you are people you know, colleagues, friends, family. You believe you understand them. Their smiles, their anger, the language in their eyes, all of it feels familiar to you. But is that really true? One of the biggest misconceptions in human history is this: we believe we understand people. In reality, we constantly misread ourselves, and we constantly misread the people around us. In this episode, we step into a world Robert Greene mapped out in his book, The Laws of Human Nature, the forces buried deep in human behavior that we ignore every. Robert Greene, already famous for The 48 Laws of Power, released his most profound work in 2018. In this book, he doesn't ask, how does someone gain power? He asks something more fundamental. Why do people do what they do? Why does even a rational person suddenly act irrationally? Why does the most trusted friend eventually betray you? Greene's central claim is the most striking part. He isn't warning you to watch out for people who might deceive you. He's pointing to something far more dangerous. The greatest threat is that you are deceiving yourself. Your own irrationality, your own ego, your own fear. These cloud your thinking so completely that you never realize how blind you actually are. Looking across human history, we see that even the most brilliant people have made catastrophic decisions. Why? Because they believed they were reasoning things through, when in reality they were being driven by hidden emotions, fear, envy, ego, or the need to protect their self-image. Greene examines these events through a blend of psychology and history, so we can see that this same pattern is still playing out in our lives today, just in different clothing. Some of the sharpest minds in history have walked straight into disaster while feeling, in the moment, entirely certain of their own logic. A brilliant general overextends his army because retreating would feel like admitting weakness. A skilled executive ignores a warning sign because acknowledging it would mean confronting a decision he already made publicly. In hindsight, these look like obvious mistakes. In the moment, they felt like clear-headed judgment. That gap between how a decision feels and what's actually driving it is the space this entire series lives in. Think about that coworker who always believes they're the most capable person in the room, even though their work is, at best, average. Or that friend who fills every conversation with their own problems with no real interest in hearing yours. None of these people are bad. They're simply caught in patterns of human nature they don't even recognize in themselves. And if you don't understand these patterns, you'll keep falling into the same traps, keep getting hurt in the same kinds of relationships, keep making the same mistakes. Across this series, we'll journey through Robert Greene's 18 Laws of Human Nature. Each episode will take on one law, how it works, which historical figures reveal it most clearly, and most importantly, how you can recognize and manage it in your own life. We'll talk about the law of irrationality, the law of narcissism, the law of aggression hidden beneath the surface, and many other invisible forces that quietly steer our decisions every day. Let's take a small preview of this journey. Exactly which doors we'll be standing in front of in the episodes ahead. First comes the law of irrationality. We all like to believe we make decisions through logic, but in reality, most decisions are made emotionally first and reasoned into place afterward. In that episode, we'll see how this hidden process quietly runs our daily choices and how to catch it in the act. Next comes the law of Gnosticism. Everyone carries a degree of self-focus that's normal, but in some people, that tendency grows so extreme that they lose the capacity to register anyone else's feelings at all. We'll learn to tell the difference between healthy self-regard and destructive narcissism. After that comes the law of role-playing, where Greene shows that a person's true character is revealed not in what they say, but in the long-term pattern of what they do. We'll learn which signals, visible even at a first meeting, quietly reveal someone's real nature if we're paying attention. Then comes the law of covetousness and the law of short-sightedness, which explains why people chase small, immediate rewards at the cost of long-term damage. There's the law of defensiveness, the law of self-sabotage, the law of repression, the law of envy, the law of grandiosity, the law of gender rigidity, and the law of aimlessness, and finally, the law of sublimity, where Greene shows how a person can transform their most destructive instincts into something that makes them genuinely great. Behind each law will be a real human story, some drawn from history, some from more recent, widely known figures. We'll see how the same psychological force can carry one person to extraordinary success and push another toward complete collapse. The difference always comes down to one thing: self-awareness. The person who recognizes these forces in themselves can control them. The person who doesn't becomes their puppet. As you watch this series, I'll ask one thing of you. With each episode, don't just think about other people. Turn the lens back on your own life too. Ask yourself, which decisions were really driven by emotion, not logic? Ask which relationship you saw not as it truly was, but as you wished it to be. That honesty is what will carry you toward real change. Why does this matter so much? Because we deal with people every single day at work, in our families, in friendships, in love. And if we don't understand human nature as it truly is, we'll keep being deceived, keep being disappointed, keep asking, why do people act this way? When the answer was in front of us the whole time, we simply weren't trained to see it. Greene argues that the first step to understanding human nature is recognizing the patterns within yourself. When we see envy, ego, or aggression in someone else, we judge it instantly. But we almost never admit that these same instincts live inside us too. They just show up differently. Picture this scene: a mid-career manager who has worked at the same company for years. He sees himself as the fairest, most rational person in the room, someone who always puts the organization first. But in reality, every decision he makes quietly favors the people who praise him and pushes away the people who dare to question him. He would never admit this because, in his own mind, he's always deciding based on merit. This is the subtlest form of self-deception. It isn't lying. It's rewriting your own story so that you're always the hero of it. The unsettling part is that this manager isn't unusual. He isn't a villain in any obvious sense. He goes home, loves his family, believes he's a decent person, and by most measures, he probably is. That's precisely what makes self-deception so hard to fight. It doesn't require bad intentions. It only requires an unexamined mind, which describes most of us, most of the time, on most days. Psychology tells us this self-deception isn't a weakness. It's a defense mechanism built into the mind. Through evolution, our minds developed a need to hold onto a stable, positive sense of self. If we absorbed every failure, every mistake, directly and honestly, we might lose the mental strength to keep functioning day to day. So the mind builds a workaround. It blames outside circumstances for failure and credits personal ability for success. Psychologists call this the self-serving bias. Everyone carries some version of it. The only difference is degree. Greene's argument is this: until we understand this process, we'll keep misreading our own decisions. We'll believe we made a business decision through pure logic, when really it came from fear, later dressed up in the language of reason. We'll believe we walked away from a relationship because it wasn't healthy, when really it was because our ego had been wounded. Learning to see that gap is the real test of self-awareness. Greene brings up another key idea, what he calls developing social intelligence. Most people lose the ability to read others as they grow older because they become so consumed by their own thoughts and anxieties that they stop noticing the real behavior of the people around them. Children, despite their limited vocabulary, are remarkably good at reading facial expressions and subtle shifts in tone. In this series, we'll learn how to recover that lost ability, how to pay attention to behavior instead of words, and how to wait long-term patterns more heavily than a moment of good manners. There's another side to human nature we often overlook. We're as rational alone as we are irrational the moment we join a group. Greene shows that humans are, at their core, tribal creatures. For thousands of years, our survival depended on staying connected to the group. So our brains evolved to treat going against the group's opinion as something almost as threatening as physical danger. That's exactly why we so often go along with decisions we'd never make on our own. Picture a meeting where everyone is nodding along to a decision, while privately many of them know it's the wrong call. No one speaks up, because speaking up feels like stepping outside the group's protection. The same pattern plays out in families, in friend groups, even at a national scale. When a group follows a leader or an idea without question, every member believes They're reasoning independently when really they're just afraid of losing. The group's approval. This is one of the hardest truths in the book to sit with, because it means intelligence alone doesn't protect you. A brilliant, well-educated person can walk into a room full of confident voices and quietly abandon their own judgment within minutes without ever noticing it happening. Greene calls this a kind of temporary insanity that groups induce in otherwise sane individuals, and the frightening part is that it feels, from the inside, exactly like clear thinking. A large part of this series will focus on how to protect your independent judgment, even while remaining part of a group. That isn't easy. It requires the courage to tolerate temporary discomfort, the courage to speak the truth even at the risk of being disliked. But Greene shows that the most influential people in history, the ones who genuinely changed things, all shared this same courage, standing firm against group pressure and holding on to their own perspective. We'll also look at the opposite failure, people who define themselves entirely through opposition to the group, who mistake contrarianism for independence. True independent thought, Greene argues, isn't about always agreeing or always disagreeing with the crowd. It's about arriving at your position through your own honest reasoning and being willing to revise it when the evidence changes, regardless of which way the room is leaning. Another important thread is the power dynamic present in every human relationship, whether we admit it or not. In friendship, love, family, and work, there's always a subtle balance of control. One side holds a bit more, the other a bit less. When that balance stays healthy, relationships function well. But when someone starts exploiting that balance quietly, inducing guilt or weaponizing emotion, it turns into something harmful. In this series, we'll learn to spot those subtle signals early, so you can protect healthy boundaries in your own relationships. Greene is careful to point out that power itself isn't the problem. Every relationship has some asymmetry, and pretending otherwise doesn't make anyone safer. The real danger lies in pretending the imbalance doesn't exist, because that denial is exactly what lets it be misused, without anyone noticing, including the person doing the misusing, who often believes their own intentions are pure, even as their behavior tells a different story. Scene: an old tree, its roots spreading deep into the soil, new shoots growing above. By the end of this series, we'll arrive at perhaps the deepest question of all our own. Mortality. Greene shows that when a person truly absorbs the fact that life is finite, something shifts inside them. Petty ego battles, small rivalries, envy toward others, all of it suddenly feels meaningless. A person who can sincerely accept this truth learns to live with far more clarity and purpose. That realization holds the power to transform even the most destructive instincts in human nature. Think about relationships. How many times have you gotten close to someone who seemed extraordinary at first, only to discover, months later, that they were a completely different person? Greene shows there's no mystery behind this. There are specific signals present from the very beginning that we chose to ignore because we wanted to see what we wanted to see, not what was actually there. This is perhaps the most dangerous side of human nature. We don't see reality. We see the reflection of our own wants. We're drawn to people who seem to complete something missing in ourselves. We make decisions that satisfy our ego rather than serve our actual well-being. And behind every one of those decisions sits one of these deep psychological forces, which is exactly what this series is built to uncover, one law at a time. You might be wondering, can this knowledge really change your life? The answer is yes, but only if you're willing to observe yourself honestly. At the heart of Greene's philosophy is a simple but difficult truth. No change is possible without self-awareness. Until you acknowledge the irrationality, the envy, or the ego inside yourself, you'll remain a servant to seen. A person standing before a mirror, the focus slowly narrowing to their eyes. And that's really the point of this series. We won't just be trying to understand other people. We'll be understanding ourselves. Because until you learn to recognize the dark corners of your own mind, you won't be able to accurately read anyone else's behavior either. The journey to understanding human nature begins with understanding yourself. Taken together, this series is not simply a summary of a book. It's a mirror, one where you'll keep seeing yourself, sometimes uncomfortably, sometimes with a sense of release. Understanding human nature isn't about judging people. It's about learning to understand and forgive people more deeply, yourself included. And that understanding gives you something no degree or technology ever could: the ability to build real, deep, lasting relationships with the people around you. Taken together, this series is not simply a summary of a book. It's a mirror one where you'll keep seeing yourself, sometimes uncomfortably, sometimes with a sense of release. Understanding human nature isn't about judging people. It's about learning to understand and forgive people more deeply, yourself included. And that understanding gives you something no degree or technology ever could: the ability to build real, deep, lasting relationships with the people around you. This introduction was just the first step of our journey. It laid the foundation on which the rest of this series will build. If today's discussion raised a question in your mind, if it brought back a memory of a relationship or a decision in your own life, then you've arrived exactly where you're meant to be. There is no shortcut here, and no single episode will hand you a complete picture on its own. Each law builds on the one before it, and the full weight of this framework only becomes clear once you've walked through all 18. So take this introduction as an invitation to look more closely at the people around you and at yourself, starting today.